Hello, we're going to talk about Chapter 10, and you need to know what type of things you do to create a safe neighborhood and communities from traffic problems and crime. Traffic problems can be a unique thing. A lot of times people will call up and say, I've got speeding in my area. You can do selective patrol to stop the speeding, or it might be a continuing effort and you can't put somebody out there all the time, so they might have it recognized as an enhanced speed zone fine. In other words, in Williamsburg, we had a couple of streets that, as a matter of fact, it was Long Hill Road, that there was continual speeding. And the Skipwith people complained about all the speeding. So we ran radar, it was still speeding, so we put up an enhanced speed zone fine. And we put the signs up and gave time for everybody to recognize the signs. And then we started running radar again. Who did we catch? The people in the neighborhood were the ones speeding, but still they didn't like it. But there are other things that you can do in speeding. Direct patrol. A lot of people don't like photo red, but for example in Virginia Beach, photo red has stopped a huge number of accidents that had been occurring at some major intersections. And if it's done properly, it works. If it's not, it doesn't. And let me just explain how it works. You have to have a certain number of violations during an 8-hour period to make it worth having the machine, because you don't own the machine, you rent it. So if there's enough, they put up the stuff. Then there's a grace period, and then once the grace period's over, they go back and they look at the tapes. The company will send the police department a link to those tapes, and they'll go in there and they'll check it and they'll watch it. And when photo red works, it records 3 seconds before and 3 seconds after the violation, after it snaps the picture. And the reason for that is when the police officer goes back and look at it, and they're supposed to look at every single one, if they go back and look at it, they can tell if they moved out of the way because somebody was going to hit him in the back, if they moved for an emergency vehicle, that type of thing. So if it's done correctly, it works well. And the whole point of traffic control in the first place is behavior modification. It's not revenue building. Police departments get hardly no money out of it, but there are places that use it as a revenue generating thing. In Virginia, as a matter of fact, careful you speed through Emporia on 95. But that's not the purpose of behavior modification. The purpose of behavior modification and traffic enforcement is to change the behavior, not to generate revenue. And if properly used, that's the way it's supposed to be. But just like everything else, you're going to have people that abuse it or departments that abuse it. So the photo red really worked well. Some departments have gone into photo speed, particularly in school zones. It'll snap a picture if you go through and it gets your license plate. My daughter did that when she was in Baltimore, and I get a thing in the mail. I have to pay this fine, and a picture of my car, because I was doing some work on her. So, I asked her, did you know you went through this? No, I didn't know school was in. Well, just because there's not flashing lights, if it's school year, it's a school day, it might be there. So any of those things used are, if they're used correctly, are great behavior modification tools. Another might be some selective enforcement just for particular areas. It might be a DUI enforcement, and that gets into a whole different thing on how you handle a DUI checkpoint. It has to be written out, it has to be approved. There's a whole lot that goes into it. So there's all those kinds of things. Getting the speed limit reduced, changing a traffic pattern, having a traffic light installed, or a stop sign installed, or turning someplace into a four-way stop because there's blind areas. There's all kinds of things you can do for traffic. Tell me a few that you think work, that you think are fair. Just remember, in photo red, it's not the people that run the red light are breaking the law, and through photo red, it's not a traffic offense. It's a fine. It's an administrative fine. But just because they caught you with a camera and you were breaking the law in a public place doesn't make it evasion of privacy. If it was in a private development, that's a different story. But that would depend on the HOA. So think about some traffic, ways you can modify traffic. That's really important. What about crime? Crime run rampant in some neighborhoods? Of course it does. And you have to be concerned about how you're going to address that crime. For example, when we put a lot of officers out to run out people selling drugs, after we ran them out, somebody else was back the next day. So it's a continual thing. And it's a crime prevention initiative. If you have a lot of crime in a particular area. In Charlotte, North Carolina, and other places do this, they assign a police officer to that neighborhood. And anytime something happens in that neighborhood, he sends out an email to everybody. And if they have something, they can call him directly or email him directly. It works really well. It puts the police back in contact with the neighborhood. That's very important. They've got to get back in contact with the neighborhood. But there are different things. You know, they've got, if you go to Charlotte, and I'm saying Charlotte because that's where my daughter lives. If you go to Charlotte, you can pull up the crime map. It'll tell you where all the crimes happen around where you are. That's important. And in traffic, it tells you real time. So you'll know if there's an accident in a certain place. All those things are to create a better quality of life for the people living in that area. Because it not only builds partnerships, but it solves problems. And with that partnership with the community, new problems pop up, you can solve those. Or it might be bad reputation of the police department. At least you've got a contact you can talk to. And it's a police officer that can work through that. It's always great if you have one contact that you can always get a hold of or several, instead of calling the administrative line at the police department and getting the runaround. So tell me what you think about that. And after you look at 9 and 10, because you should have already looked at 8, I'm posting the quiz, so you can go ahead and take that. So next week's a wrap-up, so we're working fast, so make sure you turn in all your work. All right? Take care.